These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
He's been an absolute joy. Not knowing him a year ago, and again, not just Ant, but he's got a great support system. And this level of commitment, it's more about the person than the player. You don't do this unless you trust the person, and he's everything we want to be. And again, his positivity, his energy he brings to his teammates, to us as coaches and scouts, it's invaluable. So we want him to continue to improve, but never lose who he is, because he's a really special guy.
Just offering heaps of lavish praise on the next face of the National Basketball Association, Sir Anthony Edwards. If you guys haven't, by the way, for both you guys, Judd and Declan, and the audience, heard Kyle Teige's stories on the last episode of Flagrant Howls earlier this week about just like playing blackjack with Anthony Edwards, and Ant, the dealer's name was Victor, and so Ant was like, every time Ant like isn't a huge blackjack player, but every time he would win a hand, he'd be like trash talking the dealer, calling him Wemby. It was just great stories from Kyle, so definitely go check that out. Welcome into Flagrant Howls. We have expanded some of our team-centric shows. We're going to be doing more of them. We're basically taking the Wolves and Twins and hockey wild conversations that we have on Mackie and Judd, and we're putting those conversations in some of these team-centric podcasts. So Flagrant Howls, you're going to see and hear more from us. The SKOR Twin Show, which, by the way, is up to 25th on the Apple Baseball podcast charts today.
Cheers.
Flagrant Howls is right there, I think, 51st in the NBA chart ranking. So thank you guys. And then Purple Daily was top 10 on the football side. So, and Judd's hockey shows pretty regularly, like flirting with top 10 to 25 kind of.
In season and playoffs, we're usually in that 10 range. And yeah, we usually are in the top 25 for the most part. Hockey, I will say the only downfall, not the only, one of the downfalls of the NHL is the offseason outside of the free agent and the draft. It is very quiet. It's not like the other three major sports where there is some type of blips and things to talk about. Hockey, when they say they're on the golf course, everybody is on the GD golf course.
And they're like, half of them go to Finland and Russia and Canada or whatever. They're not like hanging out in Vegas.
I still think baseball's the worst.
It's
because
long.
at least hockey has like drop dead days of free agency starts, time to sign guys. Baseball is totally lacking. Like you could get a guy signed to a deal in December and then another guy doesn't sign a deal till March. So baseball, get your act together.
Yeah, screw baseball. Let's talk about the National Basketball Association here, the Timberwolves. So DraftKings over-under win totals came out yesterday. Updated over-under win totals. I got the Western Conference in front of me. Now, I will say the Blazers and the Clippers are off the board right now because those are the teams that are the most uncertain, right? Like Damian Lillard technically still plays for the Blazers, but they're talking trade with him. And the Clippers, there's all these rumors about James Harden and different moves they're trying to make. So the Blazers and Clippers are off the board. I think the Blazers, even with Lillard, would be below the Wolves. The Clippers, with a healthy allotment of their current roster, would probably be above the Wolves. But here we are. You guys tell me what you think about this. Would you hammer the over or the under here? So Nuggets, 54.5. They are 3 wins clear of the next team, the Suns, at 51.5. Warriors, 49.5. Lakers 48.5. That's a big jump. Mavericks and Grizzlies tied at 45.5. And so that's your top 6 right there. Those are your avoid the play-in teams. Nuggets, Suns, Warriors, Lakers, Mavericks, Grizzlies. Then you get into 3 teams with 43.5 win totals. Kings, Pelicans, Wolves tied in that group.
Okay.
And the Thunder are at 42.5. Big gap then to Jazz at 34.5. So an 8-win gap from the 10th team. So there's like a play-in line basically. But the Clippers would be in here too. So the Clippers would be much higher than 34.5. Rockets 31.5. Spurs 30.5. So the Wolves won 42 games last year. The DraftKings over-under for this year right now is 43.5. Mm-hmm. So just kind of a slight improvement. Mm-hmm. Are you feeling over or under?
Over, definitely. Because if it's not, I think heads roll. Because I mean, we're talking about a good, solid season, I think. But I mean, So if the Gobert cat thing is going to work, it doesn't have another year to wait. It's going to have to work in 2023-24. Ant is, I hope it's made clear, and I feel it's been made clear that this is Ant's team, which becomes an enormous factor. Cat can still be an outstanding player, but he should now turn into a complementary personality, if that makes sense. I don't hate this team, but I do think that there also should be pressure. And anything that was expected last season, I think, became a disappointment. That disappointment has to be turned into results right now. So if I was to go to Vegas and lay down a bet, 43.5, I go over. And I think it should be over by, how can I put this? A comfortable margin. So I'm not saying a ridiculously high win total, but I actually like this for the over because I think it's extremely obtainable. And a lot of people get a great chance to prove that last year was, if not a fluke, a learning process, including Chris Finch. I'm going over.
Yeah. Real quick. When you say, let's say they go under, and it's not because like Ant missed 70 games or something.
Right.
It's just like an underachieving under. When you say heads roll, are you talking? Because I think Connolly is ironclad regardless.
Yeah.
Even though he's like,
I think Finch. I think
it'd be like a
Finch
Finch thing. Okay.
Yes, I think if they don't have what we consider to be a good season, and they need to, in my opinion, I'm not sure what Dex thinks, but in my opinion, they need to at least flirt with a top 6, like very strongly.
I'd like the top 6.
No, I agree
don't
with
think
you.
It's like not
but I
unreasonable
mean, you
to say
need to
just be a
flirt,
top 6.
like you need to be fighting to be in there consistently, and not because the rest of the conference is not great. It needs to be a fight that is a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, are they a 44-win team, right? They're 43.5 over and under. Are they a 44-win team? Are they, 41 is a 500, so can they win 3 games more than an average 500 team? That's kind of how I would look at this, right?
Declan doing math on the fly.
I know.
I'm here for this right now.
Yeah.
What would be their
Conflicted
loss
math,
total?
too.
43 and 38. Is that right?
44 and 38.
44 and 38?
38,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah, so you know
82,
that.
you gotta
Now you threw a different unnecessary
Spelling
curveball
and
at me
math.
there.
Spelling
yeah,
and math.
Please,
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That
Please
was
don't.
self-inflicted math. There.
Yes, it was. Yeah. I think
Carry
they're a
the six.
44-win team for sure. Last year they obviously underachieved from the 49.5, I think total that was set, which I mean, looking back, we all thought they should be a 50-win team.
I think we set that. I think the actual was like 46.5, but like,
Okay.
yeah, it's lower than it was last year for sure.
But I think they're a 44-win team. It's interesting that they just see clear regression, like coming to a team like the Kings, like were the Kings just big-time overachievers last year, which they probably were. They probably overachieved. Are they still above a play-in team? They certainly should be. But yeah, I think they have enough here to run this back, and assuming everyone stays healthy, Ant doesn't miss significant time, that they probably can definitely squeeze out 44 wins.
Yeah, I would also take the over. I've also probably taken the over on every Timberwolves team since 1996, even though I wasn't, legally old enough to do so. It's funny because you can sit here and say, oh yeah, over 43.5, and yeah, they should be a top 6 seeded team and they should avoid the play-in. But then when you start to go through the actual exercise of, okay, well, which teams would they beat out to be a top 6 team? Well, the Nuggets just won the title. And they did fight the Nuggets very well in that playoff series. But, like, nobody would argue that the Nuggets, even after losing a couple pieces, the Nuggets are still going to be considerably favored to win more games than the Timberwolves until proven otherwise. The Suns are interesting because they're one of the most top-heavy teams you'll ever see in the NBA. Are those guys going to stay healthy enough? Do they have enough depth? I could see attrition preventing the Suns from winning the 51.5 over-under total here. The Warriors are such a wild card. How does Chris Paul fit with that team? Mm-hmm. Do they even care until February, right? Do they give a rip about the tournament in November and December? So like the Warriors could just put it on autopilot like they did this season and then kind of try and flip a switch, which didn't really work out well. I do think the Lakers are better. The Mavericks, I don't know, man. That feels like a nuclear situation.
Yeah, I agreed.
I don't know that it worked well enough to just like run it back the way they're going to. I think the Grizzlies got better if the John Morant suspension is going to be a thing, but getting rid of Dylan Brooks, bringing in Marcus Smart, I actually like what they did. And the Kings, I don't know. That was a 1-year pop-up. They have a really good young core. They probably take a step back. So Pelicans, it's all dependent on Zion Williamson. So you could go through and make a case for any of these teams to be above the Wolves. But if you start to list the reasons why the Wolves will be better than the 42-win team from last year, it's a pretty long list. You know, you get, for me anyways, a full season of Mike Conley instead of D'Angelo Russell, I think just fits way better with this collection. An adult in the room, a guy that's not going to go rogue and think he's Kobe for 18 minutes a night. You know, like D'Angelo Russell would just like try to take over games. And it would work like 1 in every 4 times, but then he would have these like 3 for 13 clunkers all the time. So if Conley doesn't fall off the age cliff, I think having a full season of Conley, and he's not going to play 82, that's a reason that they're going to be better. Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels' ascensions should be a reason why they are better. In theory, another year of chemistry with the Gobert-Cat experiment. Not that it's a perfect pairing, but another year of it should be better. This is a sneaky one. Jalen Noel, who I loved going into last season, played 18 minutes a game and only missed like 12 games or something. And he was awful for the majority of the season. Did not play defense, could not knock down a 3-point shot all year. So you're essentially replacing like 18 minutes a game of Jalen Noel with better players now going forward, which is going to be ideal. And then, you know, Leonard Miller, Josh Minot, Wendell Moore Jr., could one of them kind of join the party? So I feel like there's a lot more reasons why they're going to be better than why they would get worse. And that's why I'm over the 43.5 at this point.
I think the one thing that I'm very curious about is how does the backup point guard shake out? Because Conley, at his age, just is going to miss time. Like Cat, I think we should count on being back, and you know, hopefully he does not get hurt again. But I don't think that there should be this, oh, Cat or Ant are going to miss time. Ideally, they don't miss much time, if any at all, right? Conley's going to. So what I'm curious about is who is the next guy up who I think is going to probably play substantial time, who's going to be on the floor when Conley, is being rested, or in some games for sure just flat out doesn't play.
I think you'll see, my guess is Jordan McLaughlin still plays a little bit, but that his role, and if you get the pre-calf injury version of Jordan McLaughlin, you can play him for 12, 15 minutes and he can be a really good catalyst.
Sure.
But I think you're going to see sort of like combo guys take over the ball handling. Nickeil Alexander-Walker can do a little ball handling. Shake Milton is effectively the backup point guard. But then you're also going to see sometimes Kyle Anderson can run point. Anthony Edwards, when Mike Conley's not out there, can be like a point ant, I guess, if you want to call him that. Do they have just a traditional classic backup point guard besides Jordan McLaughlin? No, because Shake Milton's more of a combo guard. So that will be interesting to see kind of how that works out. But I think the good thing for this team is they actually have like 5-ish guys that you could kind of trust to just get the offense going, depending on what the lineup combos are.
I guess my biggest thing here, though, is if Conley's not playing and things go wrong at point guard, who calms it down? Because, I mean, the one thing I love about Conley is there is probably nothing in a game that at this point in his career he hasn't seen.
Yeah.
So if all hell breaks loose, he can literally just calm things down. So, like, if Conley's out, who's that guy? Because that guy, it's not like that guy needs to play a ton, the backup, but the minutes are going to be incredibly important. Because I felt like McLaughlin, actually, 2 years ago now, I thought he did a pretty good job. But last year, it felt like when all hell broke loose and he was in the games, he couldn't calm things down.
Well, what's crazy is before the calf injury, the first like 2 months, or I can't remember the exact date that he hurt the calf, but he was kind of the calming guy. He would come in, and even if you looked at some of the number, like the lineup combinations, the net plus minus ratings,
right?
Basically, the Wolves' 4 or 5 best lineups involved Jordan McLaughlin. Mm-hmm. But then you look at a box scorer, and he wasn't scoring. He certainly wasn't knocking down threes. He was just initiating, and he was able to get things into a flow. And I don't know what happened, if he was still banged up, if he just missing time made him rusty. He just didn't have the same ability to keep things moving and calm, especially once you got into that playoff series. He was unplayable basically against the Nuggets. But that like 12 minutes a night of the pre-calf injury Jordan McLaughlin, at some point, if he wants to play more and be a bigger piece, he has to knock down open threes. You can't just be like wide open 5 times in the corner and not make 2 or 3 of those. So, boys, we actually have a batch of feedback here too. Flagrant Howls reads the comment section. I'd love to throw some of these out to you guys and get our reactions. Presented by our friends at Power Lodge and Miller Marine. So the dog days of summer may not last, but your pontoon could for multiple summers, perhaps. So you can get in. There's over 300 pontoons in stock. These iconic Bennington pontoons and Tri-Tunes for doorbuster prices at Miller Marine in St. Cloud and all Power Lodge locations, Judd.
It is called throttle therapy for a reason, because in this state, summers are short and our sports teams can drive us crazy. So what is better than to be out on the water on a gorgeous summer day, taking it all in, relaxing, preparing for football to start. But if you are ever going to enjoy throttle therapy, we are in the prime season to do it, and do it on a Bennington.
Yes, millermarine.com, powerlodge.com. All right, boys, this one comes from, and you can send us messages through the SKOR North app. The feedback tab is open for business 24/7. We also look at YouTube comments. So Dave Harms chimes in and says, to piggyback off your take from earlier this week about the young core of talent here, because the Wolves were like 7th on the Bleacher Report young core list. Wasn't that part of the thinking about trading all those first-round picks, that you have a young group of players? And yeah, I think... Well, on the picks front, I think when you have McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and then you have the ability to go get a Leonard Miller, a year later, those first round picks are less important when you already have your Anthony Edwards, when you already have your Jaden McDaniels. I think the argument would be, could you have waited a year and gotten something or somebody different or better for that draft capital, right? Like, let's say you had waited a year. Would you have been in the Damian Lillard conversation? He would have still wanted to go to Miami, but like, would the draft picks have talked more for a non-Rudy Gobert player? I think it's less about like, are they going to miss the draft picks, and more about like in terms of roster building, and more about could they have leveraged those draft picks for a better piece than Rudy Gobert at some point?
Which is why and again, this is reckless speculation completely. There is no evidence of this. But it's why I still struggle to believe that Tim Connelly pulled the trigger here alone. The Gobert trade was almost like a splash trade of sorts. And I'm not saying that A-Rod and Laurie demanded it, but it feels now in retrospect like a trade that was also done for like, let's make a splash, let's do something. And Gobert's a huge name and has been a good player. I just don't know.
Oh, no.
Like,
we got to put Judd in timeout here.
Judd's in timeout.
Internet
Judd's got
timeout.
a technical foul there.
Internet
Clear
timeout
path
for Judd.
Clear path foul there from Judd on the internet there.
It's an unclear Xfinity path for Judd there.
I mean, I think the problem though with the young core thing is the fact that Walker Kessler turned out to be so successful too. Like if Walker Kessler or a lot of these first round draft picks that just turned out to be busts, like I think it would have been less sour. But like Walker Kessler is basically a much more effective Rudy Gobert for obviously like a tenth of the price, and I think that's the biggest thing that's hard to swallow with Wolves fans, because they're just watching the same player that they could have just had without giving up first round picks do the exact same job.
Yeah, it's tough because if you were to go back, draft Walker Kessler, you've now solved sort of the problems that you thought you needed to solve with Rudy Gobert. And now you have, and it wouldn't have worked out exact because they would have like probably found other ways to get like another veteran in here, but you don't have like a super max contract taking up 3 years on your books, and you have all that draft capital. How would they have leveraged it? But it does kind of feel like there was some pressure to make a splash. By the way, in terms of like the young core, Leonard Miller through 3 summer league games, 18 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, a block. This is per game. 53% shooting, 43% threes, finishing almost 70% of his shots at the rim. Alan Horton with that statistic. He's basically like a G League Chris Bosh. He's got 3 levels of offense at the rim, sort of mid-range game, 3-point shooting. So he's been fun to watch. Jared Valesky chimes in here. 2 Flagrant Howls. curious. So did Kyle see those players in Vegas casinos and just sit next to Ant because he has a media pass? Or would a general public person be in the same spots, see the same people? You don't have to have a credential to just like go to a blackjack table at Resorts World. So now for some of the behind the scenes access and whatnot, you do. But could anyone have just like bellied up to a blackjack table that Anthony Edwards was at? The answer is yes.
Yeah. I think that bubble in Vegas, if you will, is a lot smaller than people think it is. And it's probably pretty clear if you walk into Vegas on a weekend. I know you were just there recently. I was there in March. I wouldn't be shocked if you're walking the street and you say, hey, that's so-and-so. Like, I bet that probably happens more often than you think. And probably the most likely place for that to happen outside of like New York City would be Vegas. Like, oh my God, that's so-and-so with his friends, or that's Anthony Edwards playing blackjack at the table 2 tables down. It's just much more of it's not as much of a coincidence, I guess, as you think.
Yes. No, it is. I mean, I guess if you're a sports fan looking for just a fun event to put on your calendar, it's like Super Bowl and March Madness, whatever, like go to Vegas for Summer League if you're a basketball fan.
Yeah, it looks fun.
I've never done it. And next year I'm going 100% because it just feels like it has become the place where NBA luminaries and even like celebrities will gather, and to put 18,000 people, I think it was the Thomas and Mack Center, for a Wemby Summer League game. It's just
right.
It's kind of crazy. Let's see what else here. There's some Cat stuff in here, but I feel like we should give Cat a week off, at least a day off. The criticism.
Cat a week off. Yeah, probably a good idea.
I'll give you one more here. Moises 9090 says, we are so lucky that Gerson Rosas drafted Anthony Edwards. It's kind of funny. So Gerson, by the way, was at Summer League. He was roaming around. He's still, I think, a consultant for the Knicks. That dude put together a freaking great roster. And he nailed, that was not a certain draft at all for who should go number 1 overall. But to nail Anthony Edwards and to just, to put together the framework of a playoff team like that, friend of the show, Gerson Rosas, deserves a little tip of the cap in retrospect.
Absolutely, yeah. He was definitely able to cultivate young talent in that draft class with McDaniels, and Edwards is going to go down as one of the better draft classes the Wolves have ever had. There was just, unfortunately, obviously some behind-the-scenes things that lingered and that didn't end up working out too well for Gerson, but he definitely knows, he's a good scout. He knows talent when he sees one, that's for sure. Not too surprised that he ends up drafting 2 studs there. And even Naz Reid. Hell, throwing Naz Reid there. That was part of the same leadership. So you can't really sleep on that either.
Yeah, all these dudes who are now getting paid this summer were discovered, I think, by Gerson Rosas. So, anyways, thanks for making Flagrant Howls one of the 50 most popular basketball podcasts on Apple. We hope to keep climbing. Kyle and I think Monday we're going to reconvene for a full Summer League recap, and we'll keep the off-season Wolves content coming at you here on Flagrant Howls. If you could give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts, and click the subscribe button and the like button on the SKOR North YouTube channel, you can help us spread the word about this Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. Flagrant Howls. We'll see you guys.